All right, guys, we are back in my garage for another video, and today we're going to be talking about the situation with my X7, because some of you probably saw the meme on either TikTok or Instagram that I posted a couple weeks ago, and all of you have been freaking out telling me my oil pump is failing, I need to stop driving my car, it's a ticking time bomb, yada yada yada. And so I want to try to clarify a few things, because we've talked about B58 oil pumps a couple times in the past, but I still think, like usual, the internet's blowing things out of proportion, and it makes it really easy to think that the worst is happening when really I feel like it's something pretty relatively manageable, at least from my standpoint. So I'll share with you guys exactly what's going on and what I plan on doing to address it, and hopefully this gives you a little insight on, what you can expect from the channel moving forward. So let's go ahead and talk about it again, and hopefully you guys find this video useful again. Now, before we jump into this, I want to ask, who actually has a Gen 2 B58 and is dealing with this issue, and kind of what has your experience been? Is it something you've just left alone for the past 6 years, or did your engine blow up like the internet says it will? I'm curious to hear your experience, so leave a comment down below and let me know how it's been for you. But in my case, let's go ahead and start with the basics, because I know some of you guys know my current setup and everything, but a lot of you guys are new. So I have a 2020 BMW X7, and like a lot of them, it has the Gen 2 B58. And what that means is it has the same engine that you saw in early Supras, as well as a bunch of other BMWs. Now, this isn't a brand new one. Like I said, it was a 2020 model year. It was actually built in March of 2020. So it wasn't like a 2019 or something when they were brand new, but it also isn't so late where it needed like a huge DME unlock situation to get me tuned. So that's kind of why I picked this one, hoping that I would avoid most of the growing pains from when the Gen 2 B58 first dropped. However, it seems like I'm still having some problems. I haven't had a water pump explode or some of the other issues that people had on early Gen 2 B58s, but it does seem to have the oil pump issue. Now, I've made a full video tearing down an OEM oil pump, so if you guys want a little more insight on how they work and what it looks like, definitely check that out. But long story short, BMW made a lot of B58 oil pumps with plastic internals. So the actual rotor that turns and creates oil pressure is metal, but there are other internals inside of it that are plastic, and those plastic internals can break and fail. And that, of course, causes a catastrophic issue because, it's not able to build pressure effectively, which can cause you to blow your motor. So very big problem. I 100% acknowledge that that is not something that should be an issue, but keep in mind, plastic oil pumps aren't new. It was the same way on Gen 1 B58s, as well as I'm sure a lot of N-Series engines before the B-Series engines came out. So it's something that BMW seemed to get pretty comfortable with, but maybe too comfortable when they started, kind of doing some cost cutting and stuff, and did a redesign for the Gen 2. And in my opinion, when you look at it, you can see some details are just a little bit too thin and stuff, and probably is where the issue is coming from. So I think that's where a lot of people are freaking out, because a very common symptom that people have associated with a bad oil pump is the oil level not reading. And like I showed you guys in my video, it starts reading up to around 21% and then it fails. And in my situation, like my car is at 84,000 miles, right? So it's a pretty high mileage car. And I got it around 62,000 miles. So it's put a little over 20,000 miles in the past year and a half. So I've done 2 oil changes. On the first oil change though, I overfilled it a little bit. And so I always knew Gen 2 B58s were typically known for burning a little bit of oil or consuming a little bit of oil. And I wanted to be able to keep an eye on that. But when it was overfilled, I couldn't really tell because it always said it was full. So after my second oil change that I did earlier this year, I've been checking the oil level pretty religiously to try to keep an eye on, how much oil is actually being consumed. And that's when this issue kind of arose, because I was checking it so often. I started noticing almost every time it would fail at 21%. And so that's where that TikTok came from, because I made a video of it and then I posted it online with like the saxophone sounds in the background, kind of saying, the world's coming to an end. This is my impending doom. But I was just doing it for jokes. But again, a lot of you guys said, no, that means your oil pump is bad. That means your oil pump is failing. You need to stop driving your car. Now, obviously that isn't true, because I'm driving it right now, right? I'm not parking this car, but I do need it to work. I need it to be reliable, and especially in winter and stuff like that. I drive it a lot for the snow and road trips. I need this car to work. So I do want to do what it takes for it to be reliable. So here's what's actually going on, okay? The oil pump hasn't failed. The only thing that the oil level failing the reading at 21% means is that I definitely have the plastic oil pump. And that is something that I wasn't sure about, because some people have said after certain years or after certain build dates, they switch to the metal 100%. But clearly that wasn't the case. At least by March of 2020, they were still building Gen 2 B58s with plastic oil pumps on some, if not all of them. So I am before whatever imaginary cutoff the internet is trying to, figure out when that is. So that's it. My oil pump isn't bad in the sense that an oil pump fails, because when an oil pump fails, your car doesn't generate oil pressure. Your engine blows up pretty quickly. That is a pretty significant problem, again, that I 100% acknowledge. So if I'm able to drive my car, it's not smoking, it's not misfiring, I'm able to do draggy runs on full E85 like I did a couple videos ago, the oil pump hasn't failed. It's kind of like the same way people say water pumps failed, when really it's just the gasket leaking. If a water pump fails, your engine's going to overheat. It's going to have much more problems than a little bit of coolant dripping underneath your engine. So that's kind of the same way that I look at this. Now, what is actually happening, like I said, is the oil pump has those plastic internals. And what is common with that is when the oil gets hot, the plastic struggles with maintaining your oil pressure the way that it's supposed to. So on our cars, it has that variable vane oil system. So your oil pump can basically change the amount of oil pressure based on its position within that, eccentric housing. If it's struggling to maintain that, what happens is the oil gets hot, and when you start measuring your oil level, the oil pressure gets really high. And while your oil pressure is being read, there is a max to that tolerance. It needs to be within a certain range. So as you see, it goes above like 47 PSI, and that is the trigger for your oil level to stop reading. However, if the oil isn't as hot, if it's up to temperature but not as hot as it is, I actually have been testing this, so now I know around 190 degrees is as soon as the car lets you measure the oil level and says the engine's up to temp. So I measured it at 190 degrees and it was fine. It read all the way to 100% and showed me the actual oil level. Now, it did indicate I needed to add a little bit of oil, so that's a whole nother thing I'm going to need to tackle. But suffice it to say, the oil pump works. It doesn't work under all conditions the way that it is designed to, but it's not failing in the sense that my engine is blowing up and I need to be in fear of that. So on the other side of things, I do again 100% acknowledge that the plastic oil pumps can fail, typically in really cold weather. That's at least what BMW has documented as a potential failure mode. So the plastic gets brittle when it gets really cold, and it can crack and cause low oil pressure when you try to start your car. And again, I need this car to work, especially in the harshest conditions, because this is my main vehicle that I use when it's cold, when it's snowing. I drove it in sub-freezing temps this year, so I need that to work. Now, I haven't had any issues. This is the car that I have been driving for the past year and a half. It's gone through 2 winters. I've driven it in sub-freezing temps. I start it up every morning when I go to work. It lives outside, so it's going through the conditions that in theory would create the failure if it was a problem, but I don't necessarily want to play with fire either. I'm not going to just leave it up to fate if there is an opportunity to upgrade the pump and just prevent me from ever having to deal with that once and for all. So yes, that is my intent. I do plan on upgrading the oil pump to the one with the metal housing before next winter. So probably in the fall or something, I'll be replacing the oil pump. And yes, I'll be doing it myself and posting a DIY, so you guys can stay tuned for that. But that's kind of my current position. Otherwise, I'm driving the car like normal. I mean, we're coming up to summer, so I'm never really going to run into the conditions where the oil pump could fail the way that people have experienced it in the past. It's really just potentially not being able to read my oil level if I've been beating on the car, driving at a really long time, and the oil temps get hot. And I'm also curious to see if replacing the oil pump helps prevent my oil level from dropping, because if the oil pressure is too high in certain scenarios, maybe that's causing some of the oil consumption. I know some people have mentioned it could even be linked to the turbo not draining effectively. And so if there's a lot of extra oil pressure pushing oil into the turbo, maybe that's also inducing some of the oil consumption. So again, that's just kind of my current position and situation and how I'm planning on addressing things. Hopefully this answers any questions you guys might have or any concerns you might have. If you saw that video and you thought, oh my gosh, do I need to get rid of my car? I have a Gen 2 B58 and it's doing the same thing. In my opinion, no. Especially if you're not somewhere that sees super cold temperatures, you're probably not really at risk of anything. And even if you are, right now, there's really nothing to worry about. It's primarily in winter, primarily when temps are sub-freezing and people are doing cold starts outside after the car has been sitting for a while, and it could potentially have that issue. And I'm just going to address it so I know I won't ever have to deal with it. So that's the current situation, guys. I'm still driving the car, and I think you can too. But I think that's it for this video. Let me know again what you guys think. We're on the right track here? Or am I completely missing the mark? Am I just a B58 fanboy and willing to send another one to the moon for the clicks? I'm curious to hear what you guys think. But otherwise, I think that is it for this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.